Eyes that wander is a mind that wanders. I love this quote. So in this video, I will try to keep my eyes on you the whole time, as a way for me to examine myself and my ever-wandering mind. I don't know if this is true. I actually probably don't think it's true. But what I do think is true is that a mind that wanders is the cause of all your problems in life. There is not a single problem in your life that couldn't be mitigated almost completely, if not completely, by simply stopping the mind wandering. Let the thoughts come in, come out, pass by, but don't lock in on any of them. At first, you're getting caught up in paragraphs of thoughts. Then these paragraphs become sentences. Then these sentences become words. And eventually, the mind only gets to utter syllables that are not even comprehensible before they've been let go and replaced by silence, continued by new thoughts or fragments of thoughts. That is the process when you go from being unconscious to conscious, as it is used by popular terms. And I like these terms, unconscious and conscious, because when you feel it for the first time, it feels like an awakening. It feels like you're in a dream and you realize that you're in a dream, and then you're like looking around and you're like, oh wow, nothing matters. What a relief. Iron robot costume activated, and you just fly around in there. It's a bit like that. I don't even know what is better, like a really fun lucid dream or just being alive right here in an awakened state. The answer is that both are probably equally fun, because both have to do with you realizing that nothing matters. That is the ultimate feeling. And all your worries doesn't matter. No matter what it is, doesn't matter, because you are not your thoughts. All those fears and worries, they were not real. You were just caught in this trap. And let's talk about how you get out of it. Like, first, just be around people who are not trapped by their thinking. Well, that helps tremendously. And when you're around these people, it almost doesn't matter what they're telling you. Like, the advice, the content doesn't matter. It's an energy transference more than anything. And this can happen online as well. If you have someone who you love talking, or someone who you love to hear talk online, the energy transference can still happen online like that. And yes, there's sometimes going to be pieces of information that just clicks with you and sits with you. But even the greatest quote in the world is still going to become content inside the mind, and is still just going to ruminate inside the mind and like, be the change you want to see in the world. And then you just, if the first time you hear it, it's like, wow, amazing, eye-opening, right? Like, you might even get high from a good quote. But then the next day, it's like, you're just going about your day, you're brushing your teeth, and in your mind, it's like, be the change you want to see in the world. Like, where did that come from? It's just echoing the thought that you attached to the day before. That's how the mind works. It's just reflecting things, right? It's like, oh, you like this one? Okay, let's give you more of that. So, crazy as it sounds, don't get attached to good quotes. Don't get attached to good thoughts. Don't get attached to great pieces of wisdom and knowledge, because they're going to bite you in the ass eventually. Like, not something crazy, right? Just a little bit, just like a little nip in the butt, because the present moment has everything that you need right here, right? So you have the availability to you have the best quotes available right here in the present moment. You are the most quotable when you are free from the mind, not when you are thinking of cool things to say. You have the most access to the right information at the right time when you are in the present moment. Meaning that when you're communicating presently, you can just, without, obviously doing this yourself, without using any effort, the greatest quotes for the right moment just comes to you. They appear out of nowhere. Not quotes, but just, like what you're gonna say, right? The content of your communication is gonna just appear out of nowhere when you're in the moment, right? So not when you're thinking about things. Now, and something to notice when you're looking at others practicing this or sharing this is that it's not about the content, obviously. It's not about the content anymore. So, it's not about how articulate you are in your speech, right? It's not about how vast your vocabulary is, right? It's not about how cool your insights are, on scientific literature or something like that. It's none of those things. This is totally different. This is like more of a, as I said, like an energy transference. It's more of an energetic thing that you have to notice in the person who shares it, or maybe even when you're looking for it in the outside world, when you're like, because teachers come in many forms and not always people, right? So, for example, Wim Hof, he went through, this tragedy in his life with his wife letting go of her life, and then he was stuck with these kids, and he didn't know what to do, and then he just walked by this frozen lake or river or something, and then he just jumped in and he just sat there. And since then, he's been saying that the cold has been his teacher. So anything can really be your teacher. Trees, nature, adversity. Every single moment offers you a great teacher in life, because every single moment offers the opportunity for you to be present. So, and these things go hand in hand. And there's a lot of people who get attached to one teacher, right? There is this famous quote, follow one, respect all, right? I would say there's a better way to look at it, and it has to do with something Osho said, which is that when you love everyone, you don't have that dilemma anymore of having to choose who to follow and who to respect. When you simply choose to love everyone, which really just means that you're seeing the beingness in everything and everyone around you at the same time. If you just do that, you don't have to pick and choose, oh, this is my teacher, this is not my teacher. No, then everything in life becomes your teacher. And this goes very well with the Buddhistic view that potentially every single person you encounter in your day is a Buddha, right? They are an enlightened being. And sometimes they're pretending that they're not, right? They're being a little bit tricky as part of your journey. Like they're helping you by pretending to be unconscious sometimes. Now this life view might drive you insane, just be warned. But it can also be helpful when you're practicing forgiveness. And again, quotes content in the past, right? Doesn't matter. What matters is energy. What matters is what frequency are you picking up from the world around you and from yourself. And if you don't like your frequency, you know that you have to change your frequency. That's step one. Okay, you realize, okay, I feel like I've had better frequencies. I'm not gonna lie. Something has to change, right? So that's step one, acknowledging it. Step two is then looking at the different tools you have to raise your frequency, right? So, and you remember, oh, so there's this present awareness technique that I learned, which is more about like being here right now and being, anchored in my own body and just seeing what's going on inside of me and, just trying to be a little bit neutral to everything that is going on. And then eventually that gets me there, quote unquote, like, because you're never getting anywhere, right? We're always right here in different versions of ourselves, right? There's only you right now, but there's many different timelines of you right now. And then step three is obviously just that you enjoy life. Right? It's not complicated. Once you have raised your frequency, then it's viva la vida, right? It's basically just you doing whatever the fuck you want. Yeah, see, I just said fuck, and I'm sharing, sacred teachings, right? Like how could you do that, right? Because I don't care. I don't care about people's approval of me, right? So there's going to be people who will say like, oh, I don't like to listen to this because he's saying the word fuck, which is, what is the word fuck? The word fuck is like, it means so many different things that you wouldn't even be able to, but let's leave that aside, right? So he said the word fuck, I'm not going to listen to this guy. I don't like that, if for whatever reason, right? And that's totally fine. That's totally fine, because I'm not here to please anyone, right? The only thing that I care about, is raising my own frequency, is to be in a high vibrational state. And I invite you to feel the same way. Don't care about what other people think of you. Be you, always, relentless, unfiltered. Do whatever you want. Say whatever you want. Believe whatever you want. And check in with yourself. Is your frequency high? Because if it's high, then that is the most important thing. Unless, of course, you're intoxicating yourself and you're creating a false high. That's a little bit different. That might mess you up a little bit. Because, you smoke some weed, you take some drugs, and you're like, oh, wow, I feel so spiritual and connected. And, but those are different highs, right? So those are different highs. And when we talk about something like caffeine, it becomes very, very evident why the artificial high is so different from the real high. Caffeine creates this delusional sense of importance about yourself, right? So it creates this positive feedback about yourself out of nowhere, undeserved, basically. And this might lead to grandiose thinking, which is obviously an extreme degree of ego identification. And when you become identified with the mind, you're fucked. You're simply fucked. Because the mind is going to fuck you up. The mind will tell you, hey, oh, you're so great, you're grandiose, all that. But out of nowhere, the mind is just gonna fuck you up. Sooner or later, it might take a couple of seconds. It might even take a couple of years, right? But then one day, your mind is just gonna fuck you up and say, I feel terrible today. I'm a terrible human being. Out of nowhere. Like, no context, no childhood trauma related to whatever was said. You've already done 10,000 hours of psychotherapy. You feel like you know yourself inside out. But then the mind just says stupid shit like that. And what do you do when that comes? Because to let go of that one negative thought that you didn't like means that you have to let go of all that grandiosity inside of you as well. Those couple of years that you've been stuck in this false personality now becomes completely now becomes you're now faced with the decision to sacrifice this whole personality that you've been carrying around for so long, just to let go of that one negative thought that you didn't like. And then another thought comes, and another, and eventually you just have to realize that the thinking mind is just not going to serve you. Or the identification with it. Obviously, thinking itself is a tool that can be used for good things. And if used consciously, it can, even create a life where you are in alignment with being your true self in your work and in your relationships and all those things. It's really good for that. But for identification, when you're looking for who you are, when you're, trying to figure out, like, who am I really, and the mind is just not going to help you with that. It's going to try. It's going to try to give you ideas about who you are. Oh, you are an eternal soul inside a temporary being, and some beliefs are better to carry around than others, but eventually you will be faced with the same decision. Do you want all the bad shit that comes with the mind, or do you want to be free from all the bad shit, including all the things that you sort of kind of liked about the mind? And the things you sort of kind of liked about the mind all had to do with pride. In some way, everything that you like about yourself, we could really say, has to do with pride. Pride is a very low frequency. Pride is considered to be the other side of the coin of shame. And this illustrates this little play very beautifully, that you have on one extreme of whatever the mind can generate, you have pride, an extreme sense of grandiosity, and on the other end you have shame, an extreme sense of exclusion and deflation of your feeling of self. And both things are obviously quite horrible, right? But they're opposites. The reason why they're horrible is that once we've experienced what it's like to let go of it, we realize this is not working out, right? Because there are these levels of consciousness and they are rising exponentially, right? So, level 201 is already exponentially higher than level 200. So when we're looking at this scale and we're looking at even higher levels, when you come to the level of acceptance, of neutrality, these are infinitely more powerful than the lower levels, such as pride and shame. So the mature decision in anyone's journey is to eventually just say, I can't have any pride in my life. And I also can't have any shame, right? So I can't care about what other people think of me. I can't, the only person I have to please is myself. That's something you have to understand. And to some people, if they're still identified with the mind, and you know, and this might sound like it's lacking empathy and understanding for other people when you say, I don't care about other people's feelings and emotions and thinking. You know, because what you're really saying is, I don't care about other people's false identification with their own minds. I don't care about that part, right? I still care about the people. I still care about doing good things for them and seeing them prosper in life, but I don't care about their delusional self inside of them. I don't care about that part, right? Just like if you saw a crazy person on the street, you wouldn't care about the crazy things they said about you, right? And a crazy person who is shouting things on the street is really just a pumped up version of basically everyone else, right? So the only difference is that the crazy person who's shouting things on the street is doing them verbally, right? They're using their mouth to channel their mind, while everyone else, you know, most people, they just keep that inside their mind. That's the only difference. So if you put a megaphone connected through Neuralink to their mind, everyone you see on the street would be shouting things like a crazy person out loud. So the paradigm that they find themselves in is the exact same as the crazy person shouting things on the street. The person who is quiet and filming that person shouting things feels just as terrible and miserable in their life as the person who's shouting things on the street. So, and that is the delusional paradigm of pride and shame, right? Because pride thinks that it's better than shame, right? Pride thinks that if it's belonging to the majority of people, or they are belonging to the part of society that the majority is trying to get to, that they are then better, that they are then in a better place, that they are then entitled to feel better. But entitlement to feel better about yourself does not mean that you are going to feel better about yourself. If we were to count the happy chemicals and the miserable chemicals in the brains of a crazy person who is shouting things in the street, who is, you know, in the paradigm of shame, and someone who's in the paradigm of pride, someone who's filming it and talking about that event, and we look at their whole lifetimes and we count the chemicals in each of their brains, it will be an exact number it will be an equal number in each of these brains, meaning that they will have had experienced the exact amount of misery and the exact amount of so-called pleasure in their life. Usually way more misery than pleasure, right? And quite literally, we can say that is an existence that can be associated with hell, right? With samsara, with you know. Have you ever heard about the prison planet theory, right? That life is like this prison planet where these souls are being fed on by these intergalactic creatures or something, and whenever we pass on to the next life, we see this light, and then we go into the light, and that light really just erases our memory, so that when we get reborn, we don't remember that we were trapped in a prison planet. And ideas like that are really just manifestations of understanding your own life from the point of view of being trapped between pride and shame. Right, that was a long sentence, but that is basically a depiction of hell, right? It's a depiction of hell if you look at life as a prison. And the spiritual teacher will also say that the mind identified person lives, in fact, in a prison, right? So the only thing that is important to understand here is that there is a way out of it. right? There is a way out of this prison, and it doesn't have to do with when you pass on and you see that light that you go somewhere else, right? That's what, these people think inside these subgroups, that I don't recommend looking into because it's just full of madness. How you get out of this prison is by becoming presently aware of yourself and detaching from the mind. Now, detaching from the mind sounds like an action. It sounds like there's this you right here, and then you have to detach, right? So there's this distance. But as it's said in the Bible, it's closer to you than hands and feet. What does that mean? What is the closest thing to you can imagine right now? That's a good question, I think, because it has no answer. But the closest thing to you right now, in fact, when something is close, when something is in close proximity, there is still a distance between you and that thing. No matter how close you get, there's always going to be a distance. So even the word close does not help us in realizing what it is that we are really looking for here. You are it. You are it. But you're not the mind. But you're not the feelings. You're not the emotions. One of the biggest problems is neediness, right? Neediness, like some form of neediness, either neediness for other people or neediness for approval and validation, and neediness for things that you think you want. I want this, or I want that, or I want this dream, I want my goals. Oh my God, I just want to be there. That's also neediness, right? It's a form of neediness if you're always thinking about the things you want, such as, advancing in your career or buying your own yacht. Every want is really just a need. There's not really a difference. If you really want to experience a different modality, like one that actually gives you the power to attract that which you want, then you have to have it. You have to have it instead. You have to get familiar what it means to have something. You probably know what it means to want something or to need something, right? Everyone does, because we are born needy for the mother's milk. But as we grow older, we realize that needing something is a terrible paradigm to live inside. Always needing something, always looking to the future, always looking to other people for your own self. That's terrible. It's a terrible, 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 terrible existence. And I can talk a lot about how blissful the opposite state is, but let's just also sometimes say that it's absolutely terrible and miserable to be in the paradigm of the ego, to be in the paradigm of the ego, of the wanting and the neediness. So the thing is, you are whole and complete, and this sounds good and well, right? So you probably have heard this 100 times, you've seen it on billboards. Those words are just noise to you. And eventually, all words become noise, right? So in the beginning, as I said, a great piece of knowledge can feel like a revelation. The day after, it becomes a ruminating thought inside your mind that you would rather be without. And by the third day, it just becomes noise. It just becomes like the sound of traffic when you hear something that used to be a wise quote. When you've heard it enough times, it just becomes like a refrigerator that doesn't work properly and makes this annoying vibrating sound, which is the case with my vibrating fridge. So how do you deal with that? How do you deal with the neediness? As I said, you need to get familiar with what it means to have something. What does it mean to have something? Feel it. what do you currently have, right? What do you currently have in your life? Maybe you have your good health. Okay, what does it feel to have that? Now, this is obviously feeling like you have something. Okay, I have this. Okay, that's the paradigm of gratitude. It's a much higher paradigm, which automatically puts you up in the higher calibrations. And with these calibrations, you also have to realize it is like a spectrum. And there is obviously the two subgroups, right? So there is the heaven and hell, or samsara and nirvana. But within those subgroups, there are then many different frequencies. And the thing to understand here is that all positive frequencies are all positive. So if you have a 250 calibration, that is still positive. That is still someone who is positive to be around, right? They're encouraging, and they're adding to your life, right? So someone who has just crossed over that little river of between pride and courage, that person is still adding to your life. Just like a person who is in very high frequencies, such as unconditional love for all beings, that is also adding to your life. Like, both people you would say are positive influences on your life, and if these two people are together, they create a synergistic effect that then amplifies both of their frequencies even higher. So, and that's why the Buddhists have simplified it and said, okay, there is the nirvana and there is the samsara. There is the positive and there is the negative. And then in the Western culture, if you've read David R. Hawkins, we've then looked into these two different groups, and then dissected them even further to gain a better understanding of what it really is. And this can be helpful. It can be helpful for you to understand that even though you might feel good, you can feel even better. And even though you feel quite bad, it could be worse, or it could be bad but still feel like it's better, right? So, wow, that was probably hard to comprehend. But so, for example, if you're in anger, right, which is bad, you know that like you might be tempted to go to pride because to your mind that is better, right? But both are bad, right? But yeah, again, so I mean, again, it's really just content, right? Eventually, the levels of consciousness also become noise, right? It just becomes like, well, I don't need this content in my life right now. It's not really adding anything to me. If you feel that's the case, then obviously let go of this whole levels of consciousness, and then maybe the Buddhists were right along. Maybe we shouldn't overcomplicate things and just keep it basic to these two paradigms of life: the paradigm of the ego and the paradigm of the soul. And the only really important question you need to ask yourself is, which one are you in right now? But the reason why I started to talk about having, the frequency of having and the frequency of gratitude, has to do with the fact that it is in the paradigm of the soul. So if you can identify with having the things you want instead of wanting the things you want, that automatically puts you in a higher vibration, right? It cures the neediness. And that's what you want, right? You want to cure the neediness, the seeking of validation. And, so, but this is obviously because it's not in the higher levels of the, this positive subgroup. It's somewhere in the middle, right? It's in the level of neutrality and acceptance. Well, because it's somewhere in the middle, and it's not like in the higher echelons of this positive subgroup, what that means is that there was probably an easier way to get all the things that you want at the same time with much less effort. So rather than going through every single thing that you want in your life and then associating with having it instead of wanting it, instead of doing this in this mechanical way, you can simply let go of all attachment to the mind at the same time, which is a higher frequency than that of gratitude and having. Gratitude is great. Gratitude is amazing, right? But love is better. Right? Feeling unconditional love for all beings is better. And you might say, if I feel love for all beings, then I feel grateful also. Well, yes. Every time you rise to the next level, you're getting everything in the level before that. Just like when you have those packages in online services and stuff like that, and there's like the basic package and the premium package, the first thing that is mentioned on the premium package is that everything that the basic package included, you get as well as part of the premium package. And it's the same thing when you rise to a higher level. Now, love is like said to be the ultimate force or the ultimate power of the universe. Now, but there's something better than love, right? Because there's enlightenment. There's the absolute realization of complete oneness and something that, is better than love, right? And then, but when you feel that, you also feel the love, right? So you see that there's a little bit more to it once we start to get curious about spirituality. There's a little bit more to things than just saying that, hey, there's heaven and hell. Either you feel good or you feel bad, and that's it. Thanks for watching.